I am one of your co-hosts, Sami Kinnison, along with Angela Belford. And today we are joined by Michael Davis. Angela's going to give us a little bit of an introduction here in a moment, but in general, we're going to be talking about storytelling today. So, Angela, do you want to tell us how you met Michael, or Michael, do you want to introduce yourself first?
No,
Either one.
I want to hear the story.
Since Michael's like, it's more memorable to me, because I was meeting kind of like mild fangirl moment. Anyway, so I went in 2015 to the World Championship of Public Speaking. I don't know how many times I've worked that into the podcast, but I do. There in 2016. I would say that was the number one skill I had, is figuring out a way to add that to every conversation, any conversation. I could look, the sky is blue. I went to the World Championship of Public Speaking. Anyway, and so that process is that it starts with like 30,000 people around the world. And at that point, the semifinal round, the top 80 or 90 people, 96 people, I think, in the world, we went to Las Vegas that year. I had not in many, many years, maybe ever, experienced stage fright. I love speaking, love it. And that I get up on the stage and there's 600 chairs, of which most of them are actually empty. You would think that would be an easier place. No, I totally bombed. And because I got all kinds of, I now know, very activated nervous system. So anyway, I didn't get to go on to the next round. My coach for that whole process was Darren LaCroix. He had spoke at our district conference. He really appreciated my speech. And he said, I will coach you. And so because I didn't do well, I didn't know anybody, I went and hung out at Darren's booth the whole time, except Darren's busy because he actually won the World Championship of Public Speaking many years ago. And so everybody wanted to talk to him. And Michael also works with Darren. And we ended up I felt like part of my favorite parts of that weekend was getting to know you and getting to know other people that were like friends of Darren. So I felt like I got to be part of that. And then now I follow you on LinkedIn and I'm like, I know a celebrity because your stuff is so awesome. And so I'm a fan.
Well, I appreciate that. I can't recall the last time I was called a celebrity, but I'll take it.
Yeah. In Toastmaster world, we kind of know who you are. Anyway. Yeah. But why don't you give us go ahead, Sami.
No, yeah, I was going to follow up with exactly what you were saying. Tell us a little bit about just your background, Michael. And for those who may not be Toastmasters and in the Toastmaster world, tell us who you are.
Yeah, what I like to say, I work at the intersection of leadership, sales, and influence, which means I work with people to help them become more influential in their communication, whether they're standing in front of a internal meeting, a group of investors, board members, giving a keynote speech. I'm biased when I say this, I realize, but I believe that communication is such a vital skill, and miscommunication, misunderstanding is the source of all problems, whether it's in our marriages, our households, or business. And it is my calling in life to help people get their messages out there, share their true and authentic voice, because I believe everybody has valuable ideas to share. And I preface this by saying I'm very careful of using this word, but I mean, from a business standpoint, one of the biggest tragedies there is people who don't get ideas out there that it can improve the world, could improve the world, because they have fear, they're afraid, and I just don't want to see that. Too many ideas go to the grave. I want to make sure they get out there.
I love that. That's so beautiful. I also don't know if we gave you enough background on me. I was a communication major in college, and I also deep fan of communication, the skill, the teaching of it, the art of it. So this is really exciting. I think this is going to be a really great conversation today. So let's jump into our conversation for today. We're going to talk about storytelling. Let's start at the very beginning, which is why a lot of the times for us. So why is storytelling important?
The terrific question. And it's such a popular topic today in the business world, especially. Get out there and tell your stories. And what I find is a lot of folks follow a trend and then they may try it. And I've heard people say, I tried that storytelling thing and it just didn't get the results I wanted. Well, that's because you didn't know how to properly tell business stories. But the reason it's so critical, and it's not a fad, is if sociologists, anthropologists have determined that our earliest ancestors, long before they had written language, some speculate even before verbal language, we were telling stories.
Hmm.
We were telling stories to pass on our ethics, our morals, our values, our lessons, how to keep people out of danger. And so it literally has evolved with us to where our brain reacts to stories that are emotional and sensory rich. We have a concept called the story code. CODE stands for cortisol, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins. These are all released in our blood through our bodies when we hear a sensory rich and emotional story. It means our brains are in sync with the storyteller. And that's why they're so important, because it's been estimated that 2/3 of our daily conversation is some form of narrative or storytelling. So it's what we do. My goal is to help people tell the stories in a way that will get the results they want.
I think you're right about people saying, I tried that storytelling thing. And well, even I'm sitting here like my little nervous system is going, you should practice that story about how you met Michael because you didn't deliver a great punchline. You didn't deliver, because for me, I'm like flooded with endorphins because it was very difficult situation. And I got all of this joy with these new relationships that I had. I don't think it was very effective in my storytelling. And I think that that's a great example of like, I didn't practice, I didn't work on it. I just told the quick story. And I think often that is as business leaders and even in all scenarios, we don't think about kind of the elements of the story and set those up properly. I often like to say to people, well, I don't know. Jesus pretty much just told parables. Like, if it was good enough for him, it was good enough for me. Like, and I think you could look at that lots of things, Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. All of these things are telling stories. And so
And yet when we get to the business meeting, we think people just want the number and the spreadsheet and the bottom line, and that will keep them engaged,
Well,
and it won't.
yeah, it's a terrific point from both of you. And I love the Jesus analogy, because anytime I'm sitting in a meeting with a lot of PowerPoints, I remember that, Jesus used parables, and Jesus never did at one point in his Sermon on the Mount say, hey, Peter, hit the lights. Now, if you look here, the meek are at a very low point, but over here we project this is when they're going to inherit the earth. So if we just keep on this upward arc, we progress about 7 years from now, we think they're going to take over. So just keep working with the meek. He never did that. And his message has resonated for over 2,000 years. There's a real simple lesson there, folks. And yeah, I've studied this craft in as many ways as I think I possibly can. And for some reason in the 1980s, with the advent of the personal computer, they thought, well, we need to show people all these graphs and everything. And you're right, it's become numbers oriented, and that's not how we process information. We're slowly making progress, but the millions of daily meetings that are still filled with PowerPoint slides tells us we got a lot of work to do.
I worked a corporate job for about 5 years, and it was so interesting to see the people who would quickly rise. I think an influence is definitely the right word, even if it wasn't necessarily as quickly in like their job title progression. And a lot of it came down to, can you make these numbers mean something? Can you, what does it mean? Tell me what I need to know. Tell me why I need to care about this. And the people who would, just present, well, here's the data.
Oh yeah.
That's it, the end. Like,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, well, I don't even know what to do with the data. It's interesting. The art of storytelling is a skill that can, if you're looking to climb a ladder somewhere, then you can climb a ladder with this skill.
Absolutely. Great point, Sammy. And There's a reason Hollywood makes billions of dollars a year and continues to, is they got the formula.
Mhm.
And it isn't, yeah, some people argue, well, it's formulaic. Well, yeah, but there's a reason it works. It's worked for centuries. Homer in the Iliad, stories that Jesus used parables. All religious leaders have used
Yeah.
parables. Shakespeare, there's a reason. It ties, it's not just because it's a trick, it's how the brain processes information. When you tell the story of, and the term hero is often used, I think it's overused, but it's the main character who's living his or her everyday life and encounters a problem that pushes them out of their comfort zone. And their only goal is to get back to the comfort zone, but they
Mhm.
don't know how to handle it because it's a new problem, a new challenge they've never encountered. And they try and they try, and life gets worse for a while. And then at the bottom point, when there's a moment when I think like, I'm never going to get out of this, my life is over, a guru steps in and provides wisdom. And then that, with that wisdom, the main character is still reluctant because the guru is often suggesting a brand new experience they've never had before. And even though they know it will work and help them get past the problem, it takes a little while to get used to it, but they build some momentum and they start having some success. And then all of a sudden, there's a moment where they succeed. And that moment of success is a point of hope for the audience to say, ah, maybe I can experience that too. And then we have to, at the end of the story, tell the new life to show that the moment of success wasn't just temporary, it's permanent, it's a new change, new perspective on life. And then the main character goes back and shares the wisdom with everyone else. That's the classic story. It's Star Wars, it's Harry Potter, it's Avatar, it's Shakespeare. Go back in time, it's all stories. And if you can follow that structure with your unique experience, then you'll have a story that hits the mark for people.
We often talk about when we assess movies, television that we don't that I don't like, or that I think I talk more about things I don't resonate with, but often it relates to the journey and or the character arc or the redemption of. So there's, we use a lot of slang around that hero's journey. I am a giant hero's journey nerd and fan. And and I get what you're saying, like, okay, we don't see ourselves in a hero because situation because it's the everydayness of it. But many times if you look at the movies that you don't enjoy, it's because they don't follow a strong formula where it's not obvious that the hero has overcome the obstacle and has evolved into a new person. There's no tension, there's no any of those things that are classic to making a story really good. And you can find when somebody tries, oh, I'm going to try something totally new and totally different, and it flops because it's like, no, 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 no. We want to cheer for the underdog. We want to see people evolve. We are looking for hope. Even the most crusty skeptics, cynics that still secretly, our brain still wants that hope.
That's a terrific
I
point.
I also think though some of the stories that I really enjoy are where the ending is different than I expected.
Mhm.
In that, so Pixar, I read Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull, and I've just consumed a lot of different things. So I don't remember exactly which source this is from, but they focus on sometimes the bittersweet ending, where it's not the ending that you really expected for the character, but you're still happy for them, but also a little bit sad. um, if anybody has seen Toy Story 4, I have small children and I have seen Toy Story 4, I mean, a good 100 times now, and it is just like the pinnacle of bittersweet ending that, like, I have cried several times at the ending, even though I've seen it over and over again, because I don't wanna spoil it too bad. So if you don't wanna hear the ending of it, just fast forward about 30 seconds. Woody spends the whole movie trying to stay with his friends, and then at the end ends up leaving his friends because that is the better path for him. and you're you're devastated for him. He's saying goodbye to Buzz. He's never going to see Buzz again, but then you're so happy for him and that he's choosing a new path. Anyway, it's this beautiful story where then you can see even in yourself, sometimes the ending you thought you were going to have is different, and it's okay, and it's still sad, and you're still happy. And anyway, the way they tell bittersweet stories is beautiful to me. I don't know. I always love a good
No,
Pixar story.
no, Sammy, that's a terrific point, and it's a great book too by Ed Catmull.
Mhm.
Yes, and I love Toy Story 4. I mean, I'm a huge Pixar fan. Their storytelling, I mean, in the animated world, nobody comes close.
Agreed.
But you're right. If they had had him staying with the fans and all that, it would have been a lousy ending.
Hmm.
It just would have. It was, oh, I just so it's been Disneyfied. We don't want
Oh,
that.
Yeah.
And that's real life. What I love about their writers is they look at real life and how we will react. And yes, it's sad, but there's also hope. Angela, you used a great word, hope. The purpose of a good story is to give people hope.
mm,
And it may not be the happy ending hope, but it's like, I can get over this problem. And in Woody's case, it was like, yeah, would have been nice to see him hang with his friends, but he needed to go off in a new direction. You have hope that he's going to have a better life, a newer, better life. And there's nothing wrong with that. To me, the best stories often end with a question to
mm.
challenge the audience. I tell every one of my speech coaching clients, our job is not to make people feel comfortable. Because what do people do when they feel comfortable?
Two now. Move on.
Not evolve.
There it is. They don't do anything. I feel pretty good. I'm in a comfort zone, and it's a natural human state. We want to be as comfortable as possible. If we don't shake them up, if we don't push them out of that comfort zone, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, which means they'll always get what they always got. So, especially in business, if we want to persuade people to buy a product, service, or idea, we got to show them that where you are now is not as good as it could be. But I have the solution.
Well, and I think that you make a great point. And some of the time, what I've seen, especially with small business clients, on them, their struggle to come up with the story is that they haven't really stopped to think about it. And often I'm working with people that aren't in startup phase, but they've been in their business for a long time. Classic. I will ask an attorney, like, why are you an attorney? Well, because I went to law school. I'm like, yep, you could have also gone to diesel mechanic school, but you went to law school. So why? And I try to help them get at their why, but there's an element where as you are in business longer, sometimes you lose that connection to the problem you are solving, and that your solution does give people hope, and that you you get so caught up in the grind of like payroll and taxes and keeping people out and doing proposals and doing all the things that you forget, like, oh no, there's things that about this that are life changing. I was sitting in a chiropractor's office one time, and they were a client, marketing client, and I was their client, and I was visiting with one of the other people that was there, and this person's like, Angela, do you know anybody else that has my condition? And I was like, well, yeah. Have you told all of them that they have to come to this chiropractor? And I was like, no, I mean, I'm not that emphatic about my faith. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be that emphatic. And for her, she was just like, I can't imagine that you're not telling everybody the story, because for 12 years, I lost 12 years of my life to this condition. And now I have my life back. And I'm like, can we just put her on video? Like, because for her, she like was so dialed into how it was changing her life. And sometimes we can be like, but I'm an attorney. I don't know if I'm changing anybody's life. But you are in some way. If somebody has a problem that you solve and they don't get it solved, then you can offer hope. And I think that it's a good opportunity to get back in touch with, why are you doing this? What problem do you solve? And how do you give people hope in their Even in delivering lawn care services, right? Or whatever the service offering that you have.
Yeah, well, it's often I hear this when I ask people, okay, why do you want to get up and speak? I love to speak. Don't get on stage. I don't care. Well, I have to think like an audience member often as a coach, and I'll say, I don't care that you love to speak.
Mhm.
What are you going to give me? Because we have to think our audience is very self-absorbed. They're human beings. By the way, I'm not saying that as a negative.
Right.
They're time pressured, they're stressed out. They need to know that you're going to give them something of value for the time that they're giving you, and that's their most precious commodity. So they don't care that you like to speak. They want to know is, who are you? What can you do for me? Do you understand me? Do you have a plan to solve my problem? And do I like you? Are you a likable
Mhm.
person? Those are some of the questions they're asking. So our stories have to tie into that, which means we have to get reconnected with why we do what we do. It's very easy. I see this with speakers and sales professionals. We get into this almost robotic way of presenting because we do it so much. And
Yeah.
storytelling and speaking in general is should be an evolutionary process. Our stories should always be slightly changing because every time we tell them, we have a new perspective on them. We'll get feedback, or maybe just through our own experience. If you're telling a story you told 5 years ago, it should be different than it was 5 years ago because you're a different person. But it's the people that memorize, which is the worst thing you can do. Memorize a story, go tell it the same way every single time. You're going to get burned out on it because you're just saying it rote.
For sure.
I also sorry, thinking about how your story changes over 5 years makes me think about sometimes where the story exaggerates over time, those types of moments. I know Angela and I have both talked about, when you're telling a funny story and the first time you told it, like, oh, you had to wait 20 minutes. And then the next time you told it, you were waiting a whole hour. And then wouldn't you know it, now you've been waiting a whole half a day for this thing to happen. And I, Josh, our previous podcast host, has called both of us out on it. And we push back because we're like, we're telling a story.
Mm.
It's inspired by the truth. And usually it's pretty harmless and innocent whenever we're, going for the big laugh and the dramatic moment. But anyway, thinking about our stories changing over time, sometimes maybe not necessarily for the best as it exaggerates and gets a little bit more dramatic in each retelling of it.
I've said this on the podcast, but I will repeat it because he's not here to defend himself. But Josh was probably 14 or 15, and I had told a story and I'd gotten a big laugh. And then he and I like walked to the car and he goes, that's not what actually happened. And I go, in the way a 14-year-old knucklehead kid does. And I go, well, what actually happened isn't very funny. And
Yeah.
so sometimes the laugh is the hope, right? Like life is hard. And so even just using laughter and using comedy to give people a break from the hard is part of that hope that storytelling.
Well, it's also part of the gift we give them. But this is an important point because I'm frequently asked, does my story have to be 100% true? Your story has to be true. It has to have happened.
Mhm.
Audiences today are sophisticated. They can smell BS.
Mhm.
Now, with that said, your story does not have to be 100% factual. Meaning, if I'm telling a story about my teacher who in first grade humiliated me in front of my class so badly that I didn't want to stand in front of people for the next quarter century, that's true. But the details and how I tell it are slightly different than what really happened. And the reason I do that is to bring people more into the scene.
Mhm.
I'll give you a quick backstory on that. And this is the reason I do what I do today, because I understand pain, humiliation, frustration, and total fear of getting in front of a group. As I was a show off as a kid, loved to make people laugh. And one day during indoor recess, I got bored. So I decided I'm going to jump up on my desk and have some fun. So I'm up there on my desk. I'm laughing and singing and I'm making sounds and I'm pointing at all the kids and laughing. They're laughing with me. I'm laughing with them. We're having a ball. And then what do you think happened next?
Teacher.
Teacher walked back in the room, took one look at me and said, Michael, since you love standing on your desk so much, I'm going to let you do it during nap time so everyone can see you. I think, cool. This is great. I get to do this some more. Jump ahead 2 hours. Lights are off in the room. Rain is pelting the window. It's dark. Kids are resting their heads on the desk. You can smell the cupcakes and cookies that we're going to enjoy later that day for a friend's birthday party. But I'm not thinking about any of that because for the last 10 minutes, I've been standing on my desk. Now I'll stop it there. So what did you just see, hear, and feel in your mind?
We were in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
What
totally
did you
have a
see?
visual. Saw you on the desk. Also, yeah, in both scenarios, being the class clown and being the kind of center of ridicule, I guess.
Mhm. What else did you see? Either one of you.
Yeah, I feel like I actually saw my first grade classroom, whether that's, obviously you weren't in my first grade classroom, but I could see it happening there with the desks, the dark room, the rain. You could feel it, hear it, see it, smell it.
What did you smell?
The cupcakes,
What kind were they?
vanilla. I had vanilla cupcakes this past
Oh.
weekend too, so it's a fresh.
What kind of cookies were they?
Oh, I forgot about the cookies.
Chocolate
So-
chip.
Okay, now let's stop there. What just happened? Now, what did I actually tell you? The room is dark. Kids are resting their heads on their desk. You can hear the rain pelting the window. You can smell cookies and cupcakes. I never said I was on the desk yet. I was, but Angela, you saw me there. Sammy, you smelled vanilla cupcakes. Never said vanilla.
Mhm.
You said you saw, you flashback to your room. All of what you said is perfect because when you set the scene with just enough detail, you invite your audience to become part of it. And the fact that you thought of your classroom is perfect. It's exactly what I want you to do because now my story became your story. It's almost a symbiotic relationship. And you're filling in all the pieces, even though they weren't 100% true. Was it raining that day? I don't think so, but I don't remember. It was 15 some years ago. Were there cupcakes and cookies in the room? I don't think so. Was I lying to you by doing that? No, I needed to create as much. We call it the VAX, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and smell. By the way, I know the correct term is olfactory, but VAX doesn't work, or VACO doesn't work for my metaphor of vaccinating your story. VAKS, create the senses. So by putting a couple of details in there, yep, I stretched the truth a bit, but what is important here is not the factual truth, it's the emotional truth. I'm setting the stage to create emotion in you so you can understand the humiliating experience I'm about to have. And when I do that, I just linked in with you. Almost every time I tell that story, somebody will say, yeah, I had something happen this morning. Shared it with a woman and she said, yeah, when I was 8 years old, I had this experience in class and I broke down in tears and my story became her story and we were that much closer. So that's what a good story does. It pulls you in. Nobody's going to fact check you. In fact, my first grade teacher, I don't even know if she's still alive. The people that were in the room don't remember me, much less the experience. It imprinted on me and only me. But it is a lesson I can share with others that, hey, if it happened, it's no big deal. Nobody remembers it. You can let go of it and you can become a better presenter or storyteller.
Okay, I am about to take us on a tangent that is super related because you make so many great points related to what I'm talking about in my new book, which is that you're saying, like, you don't remember if it was raining, you don't remember if there's cookies or cupcakes, that wasn't part of it, and but yet this story stuck with you, and so the concept of the story that we tell ourselves, now you have taken this story, and then it became your hero's journey. It culminated with, I love the rest of the story where your manager, like, you didn't, it's not like you obsessed about that story for 25 years,
Yeah.
right? And but when it came back up, you used it for your good. And I
Mhm.
think some of the time we have memories, we have things that happen to us, and we make it mean something about ourselves, and we don't use it as a moment of evolution. We don't use it as an opportunity and to, like, take the next step in our evolution. Like, I love that and then combo that, which, well, I'll let you tell the rest of the story, because you tell it very well. I don't wanna mess it up, but the, how it became the seed for, like, now you have a whole business
Mhm.
that really is from this memory. And so you've taken something that was hard and traumatic, and you have transformed it into your good. And furthermore, it gives, you can use this as a point of empathy for your clients to be like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what it feels like. Like, you started this whole thing. I know pain, I know frustration, I know humiliation." And so in the same way that we can design our stories to sell a product, we also can redesign stories that we've told ourselves about who we are and about what that means about us, which is essentially what you've done with your career, I would say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an excellent point about these memories. We have false memories and we assign meaning to events. And one of the biggest challenges I have in working with presenters is I don't want to make a mistake. And I say, you need to go screw up because number one, it humanizes you. And number two, people don't remember that. If you're up there being authentic and you make an error or two, it humanizes you. And secondly, they don't think about it. We obsess on it, right? Because oh my God, well, I mean, nobody cares. I mean, I hate to be so blunt, but people don't care that you make mistake. The reason is they're so concerned that you're going to catch their mistakes, right?
Mhm.
Sammy, when you were younger, I don't know if your mother shared this wisdom with you. I did with my son Brendan when he was a preteen. He was so worried about what other people thought about him. And I said, Brendan, you need to understand something. While you're busy worrying about what they think about you, guess what they're doing? They're obsessing, worrying about what you're thinking about them. So we've got to get, I know I just went off on a tangent. I don't know why.
I love it.
But
That's where you went.
that's it. Well, it has to do with false memories, and we apply meaning to events. And if we are willing to be authentic and honest, learn from it and say, yeah, that was a horrible event. I did bury it, Angela, to your point, but it kept me from participating in activities for the next quarter century that I regret missing to this day.
Mm.
And I might still be afraid if I hadn't become a financial planner and part of my job was to give retirement planning workshops to attract new clients, which led me to a meeting in my boss's office on a Friday afternoon. And I was sitting there thinking, this is going to be our typical Friday meeting, weekly update. He holds up a stack of papers and says, we need to review these evaluations from your last workshop. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be good. I killed that last one. I gave them everything I know. I put hours and hours in on those 150 slides. That was the best 2.5 hour presentation I've ever given. I can't wait to hear this. So he starts reading through the comments. Wow, this guy likes to talk. Does he ever take a breath? That was a lot of information. What? Here's the next one. Too much, too fast, too intense. Feel like I've been hit by a fire hose. Man, cool off. Huh? This guy sure loves to hear himself talk. Does he ever take a break and talk with the audience? I mean, it went on and on and on, and each one felt like a punch in the gut. And my boss at the end of the meeting said, you know, when we hired you, we told you this is part of the job. You need to attract new clients, and you're not getting the job done. Bottom line is, you're a lousy speaker and your stories suck. You need to fix this in the next 90 days or you're out. So now that fear that had been holding me back was now costing me my job. So I had to fix it. So I went to Toastmasters and eventually the National Speakers Association. And it was through meeting with mentors and working with coaches that the old incident came back to the surface. And I had to deal with it. First of all, I had to deal with it to get my mind right so I could become a confident speaker. But then it became a valuable lesson to share with others. So when you can uncover those moments in your life that have impacted you negatively, you got to deal with it first. Never use the stage for therapy. But once you do, and you can put a new spin on it, it's like, here's the lesson I learned. Now you've got a valuable story.
That's fantastic.
I think that Angela and I have talked a lot about lowercase t traumas that we've experienced.
Yes.
There is, if you have capital T traumas, licensed professionals, 100%, like seek them out, work through that. And when we have the lowercase t traumas, I didn't get invited to my friend's sleepover. My teacher humiliated me in front of the class.
Yeah.
I lost a pet when I was a child. Things that are hard to process as a kid and yet still have big impact on you, leaving those lowercase t traumas unaddressed will probably come back up. I'm not going to say always come back up, but those are things that will, it's worthwhile to unpack them and to think about, you may not have been invited to that sleepover, and that doesn't have to mean anything about you. That doesn't have to mean that whatever it is in your head that people don't like you, they didn't want you around, like it doesn't have to mean anything. Maybe it meant that their mom said they could only have 3 people over. They picked 3 people. We move on. Anyway, and using those stories to help other people, I think is really beautiful. I love the point you just said, don't use the stage as therapy, because definitely need to do the work off stage, sometimes on your own, sometimes with other people in group or, even one-on-one mentoring, coaching, therapy, and use this. Don't keep it to yourself then. If you have a journey of hope and a story of hope, let other people know, help them, because why not? Why not tell people the story of how it helps?
Yeah. And I will tell you, it took me, Angela, I was in Toastmasters 7 years. In the first 7 years, I loved it. People said to me, Michael, you're such a polished speaker. And I thought, wow, I sure am. And every time I spoke, I made sure I memorized my speeches word for word. I had to make sure the hair was perfect, suit was pressed, shoes were shined. And I loved it when people told me I was polished. And then one day, I'm cleaning up my office and I've got a can of N-Dust furniture polish, right? And I'm spraying and I'm polishing and I'm feeling good. And then I looked at the can of polish and I thought, nothing sticks to polish. Oh no. When people tell me I'm a polished speaker, they don't remember my message. They're only focused on how I look and not what I say. And from that day forward, it became my goal to never be polished again. Now, it took a while. What that also was a deeper insight. I was incredibly insecure and afraid. And I didn't really believe I belonged up there or had anything to say. So I had to work on that for a while. And that took some time. In storytelling, I tell people, when you're telling your journey, don't say that you had this low point moment, you had an insight and life was great. That's not how it works. We still, trying to feel confident was out of my comfort zone. So I had to deal with that. I had to fake it for a while. And then once I got more comfortable, I had to then become comfortable not telling people how great I was, but where parts of my life sucked. Right? I don't know how more bluntly to put it. Lousy experience, but here's what I learned from it. Maybe it can help you too. Here's another experience I had. That wasn't too good. That wasn't the outcome I wanted. Same situation. Angela, you talk about it being in the semifinals. That was one of my best lessons in 2003. I was competing in what was then called the regional contest, semifinals. Winning that one gets me to the world stage with the final 10. I was not a confident person back then. So I took every piece of evaluation I could get, from world champion speaker who lived in my town to somebody who coached a world championship speaker to people who I respected in the industry. And by the time I got on stage in Toronto, Canada in 2003, I don't know which speech I started to give that day, but about 2 minutes in, nothing. My mind went completely blank. I couldn't remember which version we had, and it turned into an impromptu speech at that point, just like your situation. Bombed.
Yep.
And I felt horrible. I felt just as horrible for all the people who had worked with me and believed in me as much as I did for myself, because I thought, oh my God, they wasted their time. And it wasn't long after that, though, I got an insight, is that it wasn't my speech anymore. I could, to this day, I couldn't tell you what I talked about. It wasn't my speech. So from that day forward, I gained confidence in saying, look, I've got to trust that I have something important to say with a valuable lesson. I'm going to run with it. If I don't win a contest or I don't get the paid speaking gig, I lose that on the audition, so be it. But I have to get comfortable with what I have to say in my version, in my perspective, in my lesson. And from then on, if I ever heard the word polished, I cringed, because I knew my message wasn't sticking.
I really like that, and I think it's applicable to not just speakers, but even someone that I've encountered in consulting work, where they were like, "Oh, well, they want me to be this other person." And I'm like, "No. No, 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 no. They want you to be the whole you. They want you to be all of you and the real you." And there's a nuance. I joked the other day that I was gonna start a nuance jar every time I said it in a podcast. I had to donate $1 to a nonprofit because I love the word nuanced. Anyway, but there's this balance and this tension between the evolution process and becoming the better version of yourself, and the try to pretend to be somebody that you're not, and being the inauthentic, polished, put together, all of those, words that we say that we think we want to be. And it's one of those, I mean, for me, oftentimes that moment is a very Ruby Slippers moment where you're going like, oh, this is what they meant, when it finally clicks for you and you can be your whole self and you can be your real self, and not hot mess, but just that real and authentic, and also not be distracting with all of your touching your hair, not be distracting with all of your so you can still work on the craft of speaking and of storytelling and of sales, whatever those things are. You can still work on the craft, you can improve the skill. It doesn't mean that you want to become somebody that you're not, unless you literally are like, I really hate who I am and I'm going to go on my whole hero's journey and become a very much improved version of myself. But it's about being real and authentic, I think.
It is. And it's trusting that who you are is going to resonate with an audience. And look, every news speaker, with rare exception, speaker, storyteller, there's a lot of insecurity there because
Mhm.
it's a new experience and you don't know how people are going to react. And look, even experienced speakers, I'm working on a brand new keynote that I'm going to go share with a group next week. Put a lot of time in on it, getting it ready. And even this morning, I had a moment. It's like, oh, I don't think this is going to work. They don't want to hear these stories. That's the voice of doubt that we're all going to have to deal with forever. That's never going away. Even experienced speakers who've been in front of many crowds, gotten paid to speak, we all have it. And you just gotta don't fight it. Just listen to it and say, all right, you've been here before. You were wrong then. Shut up, go away. It's like,
Well, I mean, because at the bottom line, all it is your brain trying to protect you from danger.
it is.
If you are rejected from the tribe, then you are going to have to fight the woolly mammoth by yourself or the saber-toothed tiger by yourself. And so it is just your primitive brain just trying to protect you. And so somebody recently, I asked them to name the critical voice in their head. They picked a name and they're like, so I should just tell her to shut up and get out. And I go, no, no, it doesn't actually work very well in my experience. What works better is to go, okay, what do you have to say? Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. I hear you. Have a seat. I've taken what you've said into consideration. Now, sometimes people say horrible things to themselves, and you
Yeah.
go, well, I hear what you're saying, and that's absolutely ludicrous. So I'm not going to listen to that. So you do have to, just like anything, assess that. But I haven't found it very effective for my clients to just tell them to shut up and get out. A little more effective to be like, you're not being helpful. I know you're trying to be helpful, but stop.
I like that strategy even better. It's like saying to the voice, I hear you out. Now, could you do me a favor? Could you go over there and I'll
Mhm.
get back to you later? Which, if you're a procrastinator, is great because
Yes.
then you can put off talking with that voice ever again. Just, hey, I'll get back
Yes.
to you tomorrow. Get back to you
Yes.
tomorrow. Just stay over there. Shh. I got something to do. I have a speech to give. You can come back later.
That's right.
I
Which
tell
reminds,
oh,
no,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead, Sammy.
I tell my anxious voice, thank you for your input, and I'm going to make a decision differently. I factored all of the things. I am the captain of this ship. Appreciate your input, and I will decide accordingly how to assess my risk.
One of my favorite authors is Stephen Pressfield, and he has so many books, but one of his best, he talks about how the closer you get to success, the louder that voice gets. I mean, it really doesn't want you to succeed, whether it's self-protection or whatever. And you've got to deal with it, but you got to push through it. Get to the side. Thanks for your input. All the strategies you've talked about. You two have great strategies for this. Um, yeah, just thanks for your input. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then maybe we can get together afterwards. And then usually the voice disappears because, like, well,
Mhm.
you made
Yep.
it. So,
All it was trying to do is say you could die, you could die, you could die. And then once you prove that you didn't die, the voice doesn't have anything else to say. Okay, fine. I was wrong. Okay, you didn't die. Fine. And
oh,
over
it's true.
time it just gets quieter and quieter and hopefully more productive because
Yeah.
it's like I've often had to be like, okay, well, what are we going to do? You think I'm going to die? What does dying look like to you? Oh, okay. It looks like somebody's going to laugh at you. Well, I did stand up comedy, so maybe that'll be great. Oh, it's going to be, you're going to feel humiliated. Okay, well, let's practice feeling that. I am in a lot of my coaching, I will help people practice feeling what they're afraid to feel. So you're afraid to feel humiliation. Okay, let's set the stage. And I will actually talk through, just like you told that story, where we were all listening, we were in the first grade room. I will talk through that and be like, okay, the person said this. I have to work with people in family and business. So having hard conversations with your parents. So I'm like, okay, now your mom is going to say the worst possible thing that you thought she was going to say. How do you feel? And I mean, I can get people amped up because I do tell a good story. And then they go through it and I'm like, now how are you going to react? How are you going to feel? How are you going to react? How are you going to feel? And then they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, now when your brain tells you you can't survive that, you've proven that you've pre-felt your way through that and you survived. This is all it's afraid of. It's afraid of feeling that horrible, horrible feeling. So practice feeling the horrible feeling. Now, y'all have listened to me. Those of you that are listeners have listened to me talk about the messy middle, the editing process, the crying, lamenting. Sometimes I can't get my own self through it. But that's why I'm a good coach for this, is because I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what it feels like to feel really, 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 really afraid to do that thing. And we're going to practice.
You just described the speech writing process in the story creation process. You get this big idea and you get in the middle. It's like, this is awful. This is horrible. Nobody wants to hear it. And then the tears come and the self-doubt. And then you start to share it with others and you get feedback. It's like, okay, well, maybe there's hope. And then you get to the point, it's like, I'm so tired of this process. And by the end, you got something that touches lives, and then it takes off on a whole new level. But yeah, in book writing, Angela, you've written a book. I'm writing a second one. Yep, same thing. Nobody's gonna read this. They're gonna hate it.
Yeah.
To reveal behind the curtain, Angela may have expressed strongly emotions earlier last fall, and there was a moment that clicked for her. She was like, I can't write books. I don't write books. What is this? And it was like, I write speeches. A book is just a long speech. I'm just gonna write a long speech, and there I can do it. And then, like, literally night and day, like the day before, very upset, the day after, like, I already have my whole outline. Everything has just happened. And then obviously the journey is up and down, and it keeps going from there. But it was very entertaining when she realized a book is just a long speech.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh, well, when I get done with the book, I'm going to probably want to give keynotes and I'm going to give presentations about the book. So what's the keynote for the book? And so it really did. It was about the story I was telling myself. I was telling myself I don't know how to write books. Never mind that I have a book that I have written, doesn't matter. I still was telling myself that story. And so sometimes you do have to trick your brain. Sometimes your brain is a little crafty and wily. And so you just have to trick it by going like, oh, I'm not writing a book. I'm just writing just a long speech or a series of speeches. I even gave one chapter that I was struggling with. I took it to Toastmasters and gave it the chapter. And we were on Zoom that day. So I actually read it and managed to not have anybody in my evaluation tell me that I was reading it, which is a skill in and of itself, and got the feedback I needed on why that chapter wasn't working, because I couldn't get it to work. And I got the feedback that I was looking for. And I was just like, okay, this might be my little trick behind the scenes on how I write this book. So
Well,
I want to jump in and give us another question, kind of start to tie some things together. If I am not a good storyteller, or if I tell myself I'm not a good storyteller, what advice would both of you give to me, or the metaphorical me who's listening to this podcast?
well, the first question I would ask you is, how do you gauge or determine that you're not a good storyteller? And I'd ask a series of questions and follow up. That's the first thing to get you to understand that good storyteller versus bad. We got to get away from those labels and then get to, here's how we can craft a story through a structure, a proven process that will get you the results you're looking for. That's where I would start, though, is having you determine, well, how do you decide whether you're a good storyteller or not? And that will reveal so much, which may even lead to an important lesson that you can share with others.
I would say it's kind of what he said. How do you know that? And I would also encourage you to practice. Where are you? And not and what Michael's talking about is like for a programmed, when you're trying to do it for a sales presentation or whatever. But I've even around the dinner table with my kids, sometimes there was an element of storytelling that I wanted to work on, and I practiced with the people that I've practiced on pausing and timing. And actually I need to give a Toastmaster speech on how the night that I put terrible pauses in and changed the whole meaning of a of a conversation with my children because I paused in the wrong place. So anyway, I'm a big
Wait, can
advocate of pausing.
we should share this story here. This was
Oh
Christmas
my
Eve.
gosh.
I want to practice my storytelling. All right, this is great. Christmas Eve 2022. Everyone is gathered around the table at my home. We're eating enchiladas because non-traditional Christmas Eve dinners. Why not? My mom over here has decided to open the liquor cabinet and indulge herself to some of the brown liqueur that I keep on hand. And at one point, she leans over to my husband, who's sitting next to my brother, and she says, "You are the son I always wanted." Right there, she does, and then pause, and we all look at her like, "What?" And she's and then Josh leaves the table. That's it. I can't believe it. Anyway, everybody was in good spirits. Everybody understood it was definitely a misspeak. She meant son-in-law,
Um,
not son. And it
oh,
was
I was the pause one was worse than that
Yeah, that
because
was an error of omission.
yes.
that was a misspeak. So the pause conundrum came because I think I paused on son and tried to say son-in-law, and I don't like in-law, and so I was trying to, like do that, how people say daughter-in-love and all that nonsense. That's where the how the pausing turned into a misspeak. But the other one is that my daughter said something about my youngest daughter, who said something about, well, when I get married, blah, 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 blah. And that triggered a thought in my brain because my ADD. And I went, when? And
She
then
literally stopped.
and and I was going in to ask my son, when are we going to pick out our daughter,
Her
I
mother
mean,
son.
our mother son dance because he's getting married in April. And that was the question that was on my mind, but I just stopped. I just when? And
Like, when are
Lexi's
you
like,
gonna get married?
I didn't think you wanted me to hurry into getting married. And I was like, oh, I was trying to finish my sentence. And
What's
I was
funny,
like,
she did like smack her hand on the
I
table
did.
too. Like it was so dramatic. We were all like, um,
Can can I come to your house Christmas Eve this year? I'm just gonna watch.
oh, it was
Oh,
hilarious.
Take
It was a
oh,
great
notes.
time.
my youngest daughter's best friend said that is the most entertaining Christmas Eve I've ever been. Unfortunately, she was sitting right next to me, and she said all night long, I would just be like, "Aren't you having so much fun?" I just
She
kept
said
getting
that her
more
shoulder
and
was
more
sore the
aggressive.
next morning.
Just like anyway.
Well, this is a terrific example, though. Most people do not understand how many stories they have or the impact of their stories. I learned this from my late mother. Years ago, she was born in France during the German occupation of World War II.
Wow.
We were sitting around the table one day in my very comfortable air-conditioned home in suburb of Cincinnati, Ohio, and she's telling me these stories of my grandparents who were part of the French resistance and how one night the Gestapo showed up at their door. And if the Gestapo had walked into their bedroom, they would have found a cache of arms, guns, rifles, and probably would have executed them on the spot. They never did. They wanted to recruit my grandparents to blow up a factory. That happened. Every night, the air raid sirens would go off, and they had to run down a series of steps across a huge parking lot into a bomb shelter. Most days they woke up and the question wasn't, what are we going to eat today? It was, are we going to eat today? And many days it was just a potato or two, and they had to split that amongst four people, 2 adults and 2 little girls. And when she got done speaking, I just stared at her like I'm doing now. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea, Mom. How did Grandma and Grandpa do that? How did you all survive that? And she looked at me for the longest time and she said, well, honey, that's just what we did.
Mm.
Now, I was early in my speaking career when this conversation took place, and it took me a while to realize that what she was really telling me was it was our everyday life. There's nothing special about it. And that's when I realized that most people don't appreciate the value of their experiences, whether it's around the Christmas table on Christmas Eve and having misunderstandings, or it's surviving a war. Each of those have valuable lessons in them, but we discount them because it happened to us. Who'd want to hear about that?
Mm.
And that's my most important job as a storyteller. I even leave this golden shovel on my desk and I look at it frequently to remind myself my job is to dig below the surface to find out the real heart of the story and why it's important and what the lesson is. Because every person alive has them.
This is
What
amazing.
It's like, what a great note to end on. It's
I
amazing.
know. Such a great note to end on. Michael, where can we find you? If people want to connect with you, want to learn more about you, how can they get in touch with you?
My website is speakingcpr.com. You can reach me at mike@speakingcpr.com if you have any questions or thoughts from this conversation. And also, I have a complimentary resource called 52 Storytelling Insights, 52storyinsights.com. This will be a weekly 5-minute audio that comes to your inbox. It has a PDF transcription. The whole idea behind it is to build one skill on top of another rather than hit you with a fire hose. You can do the fire hose method by buying a book. It has all the tips in it, but go through the tips and just start to incorporate these. It's my list. Nobody else gets it. So yeah, feel free to register for those.
I'm going to encourage people also to go on LinkedIn, and we'll put this in the show notes because I follow Michael on LinkedIn and his articles are on point and they're easy to read. And if I get the notification, I hop on and read them because they're short, to the point, and I always learn something. So follow him on LinkedIn, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for being here today. We appreciate you listening. Feel free to subscribe, leave us a review, share with your friends. But for now, we hope that you guys go and be freaking awesome.